Hello and welcome to another Vlogmas video. I am super excited to be recommending you books today whilst I make a pomander. So if you are thinking, what's a pomander? It's basically an orange, haha, with cloves in it, and it smells lovely. I think, is it Victorian or have I made that up? It's an old decorative item that you can just make yourself. It's very easy. There's lots of different patterns or designs you can do. Oranges smell amazing, cloves smell absolutely divine too. So I'm going to combine this with recommending you some books that you guys have submitted on Instagram. I asked on Instagram for people to submit various different types of books they wanted to be recommended. So whether it was a gift for somebody that's hard to buy for, something for themselves, whatever it was, I said submit some stuff and I will try and come up with recommendations for these books. So mostly I think, got recommendations for all bar 4. I just could not think of any for the other 4, and I didn't want to start Googling books and not seeing books that I would actually think to recommend and just kind of finding random books online, because you guys could just do that. So I've got a list of all the questions here on my iPad. I'm going to be going through it, just going to be chatting whilst I make a pomander, so yay! So the things you need, by the way, if you want to make a pomander is, as I said, it is oranges and cloves. So basically get yourself some good, decent sized oranges, little pot of cloves. These are cloves if you're not really sure what I'm going on about. Oh, so good. There you go, there's cloves. They are pokey and they have a little bulb thing at the end, and they smell great. Then you want a bit of ribbon. Here's one I made earlier. It's not finished obviously, but I've got the ribbon tied around it so it can hang. You want some little pins to keep it all in place, but I've divided this one into little quadrants. You can obviously do whatever you want with it, but I'm going to pop the cloves in each of the 4 areas. One thing I learned when I did this earlier in the week is it's really helpful if you have something to pierce a hole first rather than just jabbing the clove in, because it's quite painful for your fingers to do that over and over again. So I have a little screwdriver and I'm just literally gonna make holes all the way up and down and around and in the middle and pop cloves in them. If you've got trypophobia, is it called, where you don't like holes, this isn't necessarily going to be me showing you holes or anything, but I know that the cloves can look like that. So if that's something that makes you feel uncomfortable, please keep that in mind, because I will show you progress as I go. I'm not going to zoom in or anything, I'll hold it here at this distance, but yeah, just a little bit of crafting and book recommendations, because I thought it would be a fun combination. So I've got a bowl and a tray and stuff in front of me down here, so I'm going to be looking down quite a lot, but obviously we'll chat to you as well. So I'm just going to tip out the cloves and get poking with my orange. This is going to make my hands smell amazing. But yeah, I have it all set up on this tray so they don't make a mess, basically. So the first prompt that was submitted on Instagram is a fictional book comparable to Dan Brown. This person said that they really missed Robert Langdon and those mysteries. So I had a little think, and this one was probably actually one of my easiest prompts to fulfill, because this is a book that I absolutely loved and read for the very same reason and will always recommend for this kind of a prompt. So the book that I would recommend for this is The Book of Secrets by Tom Harper. So this follows a young woman who is basically kidnapped for getting involved in this big secret thing that was a lot bigger than she ever realised, and this is all linked to this ancient secret that no one has ever really been able to figure out, and they bring in an expert to try and figure it out and find her as well. And it follows that kind of mystery element, but also the whole trying to find her situation. It's very clever. It definitely gives me the same vibes as a Dan Brown book, and I definitely think if you're looking for something to fill that hole, this would do that. I have bought other books by the same author, so what did I say his name was? Tom Harper. Bought other books by him as well, but I haven't read them yet. But honestly, I would really say that this one will definitely fill that hole. Okay, I have poked the holes in one of the quadrants, so I'm gonna actually start putting the cloves in now. It smells amazing already. So the next prompt is something for Dad. He likes Jurassic Park, something sci-fi / fantasy based. So I struggled with this because I don't really read sci-fi, and I was trying to think of something that would be in line with Jurassic Park if it was gonna go down the fantasy route, and there wasn't anything really that specifically I thought, oh well, they would really love this. But I did kind of go down the route of thinking, well, Jurassic Park is actually a book. It's a book by Michael Crichton. I don't know if the book came first or the film came first, but it is something that has a book version, so that could be a good place to start. And I think often if someone is new to reading, then getting them into something they're already familiar with is helpful. And even if the book came after the film and it literally follows the same story, it's going to be a kind of sliding him into the idea of what kind of books he might like and be able to go from there. But other than that, I thought the kind of things that would be kind of good sci-fi slash fantasy starter points. So one of the people I thought of was Terry Pratchett, who obviously writes quite different types of fantasies, like they're often quite strange and bizarre. So I don't know if that would be too far out there or not, but also Brandon Sanderson, who is obviously quite a popular fantasy author, creates amazing worlds, but there's also lots of different types of books within Brandon Sanderson's worlds. You've got like the Mistborn series, you've got Elantris, there's quite a few different stories to go down, so there's choice there as well. So maybe Brandon Sanderson. But yeah, the Jurassic Park book would be my first place to start. I was trying to think about other books that would be dinosaur based, and the only thing I could think of was the Extinction Trials, which I did used to have a copy of. I know I've never read it, but I know that one is YA. I don't know if that one would be as appealing, but there's another one as well. Lots of potential recommendations, but not one that I'm like 100% certain on. See, this is actually quite a quick process once you get going with it. I think I was good to like test it earlier in the week because I completely have changed my method since doing that, because I was really hurting my fingers by poking the cloves in by hand rather than already creating the holes with the screwdriver and then adding the cloves in afterwards, which is much easier. Okay, then we have thrillers set in an isolated setting, something like The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware or The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. So I loved The Turn of the Key. I've got The Hunting Party on my TBR for this month, so by the time you're watching this, I may have read it by now, I don't know, but that is set during December period, so that makes me very excited. So for this, if you've not already, I would definitely recommend One by One, but I don't know if you've read that already, if you've already listed another book by the same author, Ruth Ware, on this list. So that's fantastic. That follows a group of people who are stranded in a skiing resort, and there's been an avalanche, they're stuck inside, and basically people start dying, and it's about how they all react differently and who the murderer potentially is and how they all deal with it. It's just fantastic. I think it's one of my favourite, if not my favourite thriller, and I just thought it was brilliant when I read it last year, and it definitely has that isolated feel to it. Failing that, if you have already read One by One, the other one I was thinking of is the Decagon House Murders. This is by Yukito Ayatsuji, and this is a retelling of And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. So it's got the isolated setting because our main characters are all on this secluded island, staying in this house where they're all in separate rooms, there's nobody else there, and they start dying. So quite similar to One by One in the way that they're all trapped there, but there's also a parallel storyline running of two people who are on the mainland island and are trying to piece things together. So there's kind of not, it is isolated, but it's also got elements of not having that isolation in there. But this one, apparently, I think if I remember rightly on the cover, it says it's a cult favourite. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty gripping. I've never read And Then There Were None, which, as I said, this was inspired by, but I have watched the TV adaptation, so I kind of had a vague idea of the storyline going into it, but I still felt like this book surprised me, so that was really good. Then we have romance slash contemporary with the same kind of vibe as The Flatshare. So the one that comes to mind for me is Taylor Jenkins Reid's One True Loves. Taylor Jenkins Reid is probably most well known for The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is fantastic. Absolutely love that book, and I just devoured it. She's also done Daisy Jones and the Six, which is again brilliant, and also Malibu Rising, which I didn't like quite as much as those other ones, but One True Loves is the one I'm talking about now, which is, I don't know when she wrote this one, but it follows a love triangle that's quite an extreme love triangle. So it basically follows our main character who has married the love of her life and just is very happy in that relationship. And then he goes missing in a helicopter accident, I think it is, and is basically presumed dead. So years and years and years go by and she ends up falling in love with somebody else, and that's like a great contention of guilt for her, and she feels kind of strange about it. And then she finds out that her husband that she thought was missing is not missing, and there's a love triangle. So that's the plot for that one. It's brilliant. I really enjoyed it. It made me cry. I thought it was really well done because it was very much like who's she gonna choose type of situation, and what her moral obligation was and how everyone kind of fit into play around what was happening. It was really, really good. So if you're looking for a good romance, I would definitely recommend that. Okay, then we have whimsical and magical. By the way, this is how we're getting along. This is like way quicker than I thought it would be. I'm gonna have to either speed up my talking or slow down my clove poking. So yes, whimsical and magical is the next one. So I don't just want to be typical and just recommend the Starless Sea for this, because that is the most whimsical and magical book I think I have on my shelves, and it just fits perfectly. It's beautiful, there's a lot of metaphors in it. It's a book about books. It's just got that whimsy to a T, but I know it's also not everyone's cup of tea. So I know that that's not always the best recommendation because a lot of people will find it a bit too flowery, and I know that that's been the kind of reviews when people haven't enjoyed it. So as an alternate to that, I'm recommending Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. So this is a whimsical fantasy, but it's not like completely centric around the fantasy. So this follows a cafe in which people can go back in time to the same spot that they are sat in that cafe. They can't move. They have to go back to their current time before their coffee gets cold, and they can't I don't think they can change anything. I just got a massive burst of orange juice in my face. That was pleasant. Yeah, I don't think they can change anything that's happened, so it's not like they're going to make any impact on their future or their present, but it follows them kind of making amends or doing things almost for their own moral rightness, if that makes sense. It's something where they will go to say goodbye to somebody, or to tell someone something they wish they'd told them, or to see a person that they can no longer remember perhaps, and different things like that. And it's a really beautiful story, but it's very sad as well because of the kind of way it talks about life and regret and the way that we look back on things. But I thought it was really lovely and definitely very whimsical. I think at times it felt a little bit slow, but I think that's just the kind of book it is. I think you're not going to go into this one expecting high-paced drama or anything. It's just a nice reflective novel. Then we have a festive mystery, and a couple of people were asking for festive mysteries or Christmas mysteries. So I have a couple of recommendations here, but I haven't actually read any of them yet. They're all on my TBR for this month. I'm adding and adding books to my TBR constantly. I need to stop. So the first one is A Surprise for Christmas and Other Seasonal Mysteries. So this is a compilation of lots of different cozy Christmas mysteries all in one book. There's lots of different authors. It looks really cozy. The cover looks really cozy. This one is on my TBR for one that I think I will read right before Christmas. Although I keep saying this, it's like every book I have, I'm like, well, I want to read it right before Christmas. So this one looks really, really cute. I've also got The Christmas Murder Game by Alexandra Benedict. So this one is a new addition to my shelves, and this one looks very interesting. It's all centered around 12 days in the lead up to Christmas, and it follows a game that's been set up for people to win this house that, like, they're all kind of, I think they're all family members, all related or something, and they're involved in this game to find 12 keys to win this house that the main character doesn't even want. What the main character does want to know is who killed her mum many, many, many years ago, and apparently she'll get that answer if she completes this game. So this is all in the lead up to Christmas. Apparently it is like the murder mystery to read this season, this year, so I thought, well, I can't ignore that. I'm gonna have to buy myself a copy. So yeah, this one looks quite different from the other one I'm suggesting. It's a lot less quaint cozy mystery and much more like intense mystery of, oh my god, what's happening and who's done what, but it looks perfect right on my street. I think I enjoy these kind of books at this time of year because by their very nature they are cozy, so they make me feel nice and happy to sit in the evening and read. Okay, then we have a book that makes your heart happy, maybe a romance. So I thought about this, and there is a couple that I could have spoken about, and I think the ones I want to talk about is two different authors slash book worlds. So we have The Heartstopper Universe by Alice Osman. Those books just make me feel so happy. The romance in the Heartstopper graphic novels is just so lovely, and I really love how supportive all the characters are. It always makes me feel emotional, so that one, fantastic if you've not already read it. I know a lot of people have, but brilliant. And then also TJ Klune's either The House in the Cerulean Sea or Under the Whispering Door, because the way that TJ Klune writes romances is so lovely. All of his books seem to follow this kind of redemption arc storyline and how you can be the best person of yourself and it's never too late, and I just absolutely love that, and I think that really, really shines through in these two books and just gives you such a lovely feeling of romance that makes your heart very, very happy, and that was definitely an overwhelming feeling when I finished these books. It made my heart happy. The next question was a beginners for classics, so I assume kind of classics aren't quite so daunting. If you're trying to start reading classics, where should you start? Now, I can only talk from my own experience here of the kind of two books that I felt weren't as daunting and were good places to start with classics, but I would also say if you want to get into classics, a really good way to start is with audiobooks, because that is instantly less daunting, I find anyway, and often with classics you might be able to find a cast recording, so you've got more than one voice involved, although if it's a specific bigger classic, make sure that you're getting the unabridged if you do want the full version. But the two that I started with as audiobooks was either A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, festive, so very accurate, and also Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen, which is a gothic horror, and A Christmas Carol is obviously a ghost story, Christmas story. So both were really, really good. I really enjoyed the audiobooks and they just got me started into the world of classics. I wouldn't say I'm a big classics reader, but I would like to get more into classics, and I think those definitely helped me feel less daunted by it. Okay, the next one I quite like, and it is a book where the protagonist is a villain or there's some kind of corruption arc. So this one I had the perfect answer for, and that is Masters of Sorrow by Justin T. Cool. This is the start of a pretty big series, I think. I think 2 are out at the moment. I haven't read the second one yet, but I did really enjoy the first one. This is a fantasy in which our main character really wants to be able to attend this specific school, but he's not allowed in. He has one hand, and that is basically something that they won't let him in for. So he masks the fact that he has one hand with this magic glove type thing that basically makes it look like he doesn't have one hand. And he learns what he wants to learn, he attends, he meets people, he makes friends, he falls in love. And this is basically all his villain origin story, and that is, as the story goes on, more and more clear that it's going to be that kind of a journey. And I just thought it was fantastic. I thought it was quite different to what I would normally read, and I really enjoyed the fact that we got that origin story without like hating him as well. Like you know, you don't feel like, oh, he's going to be an arsehole. You quite like him. Well, I did for most of it, and I'm not saying he was without flaws, but yeah, it was very, very interesting, and he was a very interesting character. So Master of Sorrows by Justin T. Cool. I'm on to my last little quadrant already. This one is so much neater than the one I did the other day. Okay, the next few are ones that I've kind of got fairly generic answers for, I feel like, and I would like to have better answers, but it's just the kind of ones I feel like fit the prompts the best. Someone's asked for a fantasy with some crime in it, so I said Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Now, I actually read this recently and didn't really like it very much, but I'm always a firm believer in just because I didn't like a book doesn't mean you won't like that book, or you will like doesn't mean, you know, we're all gonna like different books. So this is literally a fantasy with crime elements to it, like there's a mystery involved in it, and we see the main characters trying to figure out what that mystery is and who's killing the people that are being killed. So definitely fits into that category pretty much perfectly. Then we have political fantasy recs. Now, of course, I've got to put the Poppy War in for this because it's the definition of a political fantasy. It's fantastic. It's just brilliant. It follows a main character who is attending this military academy type of school, and she ends up learning to become a shaman. And there is a massive war going on at the same time, the Poppy War, that spans 3 books essentially in like the kind of journey that we see this war and warfare go on, and it's just absolutely bloody brilliant, and it's one of my favourite series, and I love it, and I cannot recommend it enough. So the Poppy War. Gothic and or vampires. So I have a Gothic and I have a vampires. For Gothic, it is Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Fantastic book, just brilliant Gothic staple. It has elements of fantasy to it, but it's just so dark, so Gothic, and just beautifully written. And then for something with vampires, I have got Amy McCaw's Mina and the Undead, which is a YA set in New Orleans, vampire storylines in the 90s, loads of pop culture references, also absolutely brilliant. So the next one is a book that is asexual rep, but not Alice Osman's writing. So obviously Alice Osman does write really brilliant books, and there's some of her books with asexual rep, but they've also said they would like this to be a fantasy. So for that, I have gone for Vicious by V.E. Schwab. Now, I'd actually forgotten, I was looking at a list of the books that I had, and I've got like a spreadsheet that says which is LGBT, then I can go and research that further if I've forgotten which part of the book. But Vicious, it was one that I actually had forgotten, but the main character is asexual in Vicious, although it's not really a book that is highly featuring any kind of romance aspects of it. It's very much about the relationship between the two villains slash heroes, if there's a question as to which one you think is the villain and which one you think is the hero, but it's basically 2 main characters who have extraordinary abilities, and one of them is fighting for good and one of them is fighting for bad, but there's always the like moral dilemma of which is which kind of thing. So yeah, Vicious. Okay, this one, my 9-year-old loves a graphic novel, looking for a new series to get into. So the 2 graphic novels I would recommend, purely based on the fact that I have a 9-year-old sister and I know what she likes in that kind of genre. We've got Roller Girl by Victoria Jameson, is it? Yeah, Jameson, and Smile by Rana Telemia. They're both graphic novels, obviously very visual, very bright, very jolly, and I think that anybody of that age will really enjoy them because they're just fun adventures that children go on, and that these, hopefully the readers can imagine themselves going on. I've also added in the Percy Jackson series because that's just fantastic, and if they haven't read it yet, that is a great series. If you want a proper big series to get stuck into in a whole world, Rick Riordan has so many fantastic different worlds, series going on within the one world, and it's just fantastic. Okay, next one is My Mum Loves a Christmas Movie, e.g. The Polar Express, and any middle grade or YA books. So the 2 that I recommended, one is Christmassy, one is just regular. So the regular one is Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. This is a fantastic middle grade fantasy that just It has all the brilliant moments that you want from a middle grade and just so much more. And then we've also got A Boy Called Christmas. This is by Matt Haig. And this one I haven't read and I don't know anything about. I'm putting it in here because it is a Christmas movie now. So therefore I think your mum would probably enjoy it. But the reason I don't know anything about it is because I really want to read this one blind. I just want to go in without any expectations or knowledge. So this one I'm going to read fairly soon and maybe have by the time you're watching this. So yeah, those two. Okay, this next one I'm not really solidified in my choice because I really didn't like this book, but again, you may like it. So it's a woodsy fantasy, preferably with romance at its core. So for this I said The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffins. Is it? Griffins? Griffins. This follows witches who have different seasonal magical abilities, and our main character has all the seasons within her abilities, so she is kind of powerful throughout and she's trying to master and learn more about her gift. And this follows her and it also follows her love interest, and I just didn't like it. It was what I think of as a 5-minute book, which I would say to books that basically you read them and you're like, that literally felt like it was 5 minutes worth of content. It just didn't really feel like it was bulked out. However, for you, it might be the right kind of book you're looking for. So The Nature of Witches. Okay, then we have cute Christmas YA romance books other than Inner Holidays. I haven't read Inner Holidays, so I don't quite know what that one is about exactly, but we have This Winter by Alice Osman, which follows Tori and Charlie as they go through their Christmas together. It is book 0.5 in the Heartstopper universe, so you can read it before you read Heartstopper, or I don't think it would make any difference if you read it after. I actually think maybe that would add more to it because you'd already have established the characters. So it is considered 0.5, but I think you could read it at any point and it's just a nice Alice Osman book. They always are. They're emotional, they're poignant, but they're always very wholesome as well. And I've also put in Let It Snow. There's multiple authors. We have John Green, Lauren Miracle and Maureen Johnson. So this one I have not read, but I have watched the film. I actually watched the film yesterday at the time of filming this, and it's just 3 different stories of different people coming together and how they will know each other. It's kind of a YA Love Actually kind of thing, and it's all about Christmas, so it's very lovely and festive. Okay, then we have YA thrillers / dark contemporaries. So I've given you one of each here. So the YA thriller I have listed is One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. Any of Karen M. McManus's books I think are brilliant, but she does such gripping YA thrillers. And the One of Us is Lying book is one of a series. I think it's the only one that is a series of her books. Yeah, I think that's the only one that's like part of an actual series, so you get another book after that if you enjoyed it. But one person basically dies in a detention that 5 other students or something like that are part of, and no one really knows what the hell's happened there or who's to blame or who, you know, was involved at all, and there is an investigation going around that, and it was just brilliant. Then for the dark contemporary I have put Wonderland by Juno Dawson because there is a lot of dark moments in this book. It's fantastic. It's one of my favourite books of the year. Did I read it this year? It blurs for me. I feel like I read it at the end of last year, but I think every time I check it was actually this year. It was very, very good. It follows a main character who gets swept up looking for her friend in this party called Wonderland, and it's all Alice in Wonderland inspired, but it's contemporary and not fantasy. But it has a lot of dark themes such as drugs and consent, for example, so it definitely talks about a lot of things and is just brilliant. I just can't praise that book enough. Fantastic. Then we have Christmas YA fantasy, so of course I have to go for Midnight Everwood. Are we surprised? Probably not. This is a Nutcracker retelling. It's amazing. It's so wintry. There's so much amazing food in it. There's a romance. There's just so many brilliant things following our main character who is trapped within this other realm. She has to dance to save her life basically and is constantly trying to get back to the world that she knows. It's really good. And that is by M.A. Kuznia. Okay, this next one is one that I haven't read, but I had to research just to check that I think I'm correct on this. So this recommendation was asked for a woman-woman sci-fi romance. So I do not read sci-fi, really. I just don't like sci-fi as much. It's probably my least read genre, I would say. So I was struggling to think because I don't have many sci-fi on my shelves. What I do have is The Space Between Worlds. This is by Micaiah Johnson, and this follows a main character who is in a universe in which you can go between other universes, but you can only go to that universe if there isn't another version of you in that universe. So basically if you've died in the other universe or something like that. So yeah, you have multi-dimensional travel, but basically some crap is happening and they need to sort it out, and our main character can go to pretty much every universe apart from one where she is still alive, and that is Earth, and I think that probably causes a bit of a problem. I'm pretty sure this is LGBT. I might be wrong because I've not read it and I don't like trusting Goodreads because they can often lie. So if that is wrong, I'm really sorry, but I think I've heard that that is correct. I do really want to read this one actually. Every time I read the blurb I'm like, I do want to read that, because whilst I don't like sci-fi, I don't mind that kind of sci-fi as much. Okay, and finally, the last question, which is good because I have finished my pomander, is crime/mystery with romance. So for this, I have gone for the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series by Holly Jackson. It's a YA thrillery mystery crime book, and there's 3 in the series. There is romance. It's such a lovely supportive romance as well, and you can see there's a lot of love there, and I just love it. The first 2 books were absolutely brilliant. The third book let me down a little bit, which was a shame, but it was still really good. It just went in a route that I wasn't necessarily like over the moon with it going down, but it was still excellent. It follows Pip, who is doing a special project in which she is looking into the death of a girl that happened like 5 years prior, and she doesn't think that the way the police reported it is actually what happened, so she wants to get some answers. So yeah, it follows that, and it's very good. It gives me kind of goosebumpy feeling, so love that. Just a quick note from Editing Beth. I don't know how I managed to skip over one of these prompts, but one of the questions was a fantasy with no violence in it. And I was trying to think of one that definitely had no violence, and I can't guarantee that none of these have violence, but the one that I was thinking of recommending was Caraval by Stephanie Garber, because at its heart this is just a magical, amazing journey. It's very Alice in Wonderland-esque in the fact that anything can happen, and I honestly can't remember if the first one has no violence. Like, it might have some violence, but I can't remember. But for me, it's just kind of one that I thought of more for the magic system than anything else. So yeah, I don't know how I managed to miss that one, but there you go. There were actually a few that I never got to find answers for, just because they weren't the kind of books that I read / could think of any examples for. So I'm going to say what the prompts were, and then if you have any answers for them, you can leave them down below. And if you're watching this and you ask for these prompts, hopefully there's some recommendations down below. So one of them is royal politics in a fantasy, preferably medieval. I do not really read any books that are medieval setting. I don't read a lot of historical, so I just struggled with this one. Of the same ilk, we have historical fiction, preferably set in the Middle Ages. Again, I just don't read that kind of time period, unfortunately. Then we have a friend asked me for predator romance, violence, fantasy. Now that's a lot of things, and I don't think I've ever really read a book that feels like it's a predator violent type of book. So again, I didn't have one for that one, unfortunately. And the last one that I really struggled with is a dark fantasy with no romance. That was so difficult. I genuinely could not find a book with no romance that was a dark fantasy. There are so many books that involve romance. I know that something like Vicious and Vengeful, the Villain series by V. Schwab, which I've already mentioned, they don't really focus on romance, but I wouldn't say they're dark fantasy. So for this one, again, I really struggled. So if anyone's got anything for these, please do leave them down below in the comments. So I'm gonna hold up my finished pomander now. Ta-da! I'm really pleased with it. It looks great. It smells amazing. So good. I love that smell so much. So this is a pomander. Thank you for joining me for making this. I hope you enjoyed my book recommendations and a little bit of crafting. If you did enjoy this video, please do give it a thumbs up, comment down below what your recommendations for these prompts would have been, and subscribe to see more of my face on your feed. You can also find my Patreon link down below. Thank you so much for watching another Vlogmas video. I really hope you're enjoying them. Keep smiling, stay positive, and Merry Christmas.